All right, welcome everyone. Is this your last session of the day? 5 o'clock slot? This is where the dedicated people really show up. So we know you guys are really excited about this topic. Thank you for attending. We've got a lot of exciting stuff to share with you today, so I think you're going to learn a few new things, see some awesome new stuff we've been working on. My name is Quentin.
And I'm Rocky, and Quentin's going to kick us off, and then I'll be back in a bit.
All right. Thank you, Rocky. So this session's all about eDiscovery. You're going to learn a bit about the eDiscovery process in case you're not too familiar with it. And then you're going to learn more about some of the capabilities we have to help you protect your organization. Why do you care? Of U.S. corporations are currently engaged in litigation, where you have to perform eDiscovery. The average number of active lawsuits that organizations larger than $1 billion have is 147. And the average per case cost of eDiscovery is $1 million. So you can do the math. eDiscovery is an expensive topic. It's a major expense. Even if you're a small guy all the way up to a large guy, you may be dealing with eDiscovery today, or you may have it come up in the near future and you need to be prepared for that. So the eDiscovery process occurs when you have a legal investigation, an audit, a request for information. It may be a government agency ensuring that you're following the right regulations and doing business properly. It might be a competitor who says that you have copied something, some of their work, or a patent that they've done. It could be someone who's left your organization and claims they were wrongfully terminated. When those types of events occur, they can request electronic information, paper information, emails, conversations to prove what happened and demonstrate in court what occurred, and you're legally obligated to turn that information over. So that's why this is important. So the start of the eDiscovery process involves identifying that data, and there's rules around ensuring that data is preserved. Because if you could just go delete all that evidence, right, no problem. They're a little wise to that. Next is searching and processing that information, understanding what's there and reducing that information. Last year at Microsoft, the average case that we dealt with was larger than 1 terabyte of data initially identified. That's a lot of data to work through. So we use search, processing, data minimization techniques to reduce that to a much, much smaller set of data. Oftentimes, we get to 5% of that amount. So we're dealing with tens of gigabytes instead of a terabyte. Here's why it really matters, though, is this third step, review. That's where you're going to have attorneys read through, page by page, all of those documents. Those costs often range from $10,000 to even $40,000 per gigabyte of data. So if you have 10 gigabytes of information that you're needing to turn over, right, you're looking at $100,000 to $400,000 that you're going to have to pay. That's where that $1 million average cost per case comes in. So you need tools to help you preserve that information. There have actually been cases where companies have been fined or lost their case because the other side proved they did not properly preserve the evidence for the case, or maybe even proved that they actually destroyed that information knowing that they needed to provide it. So this is one of the big challenges we've heard from our customers. Right? How do you help me preserve and keep this evidence so it's around when I need it? The second challenge we've heard from customers is around search and reduction. Help me minimize and reduce that data so I don't have to send so much information into that review process. And the third challenge is export. If I put my data in Microsoft's cloud, how do I get it back out to respond to these requests? Right? If I have this data in Exchange or in a SharePoint site and I need to go collect it, make that painless and easy for me to be able to go and do. So today you're going to learn about how Microsoft helps you with these challenges and more. So one of the things I want to actually kick off and show is some of the work we've been doing around searching large amounts of mailboxes. This is the Compliance Center. You may have heard about it this week. It's your one-stop shop for compliance capabilities in Office 365. And this is a bit of a special one because this is actually the Microsoft Production Compliance Center. A wise man once told me, I think it was my uncle, with great power comes great responsibility. So I'm actually going to search on data that I have sent through Microsoft. We're going to go ahead and kick that off. We've got hundreds of thousands of mailboxes at Microsoft. Now, if you use any of our eDiscovery capabilities today, we have a 10,000 mailbox search limit in Office 365. We're going to go ahead and start this search on everything at Microsoft. It does take a little bit. Unfortunately, we don't have it quite down to 2 seconds yet, so I'll come back to it a little bit later in the presentation. So what can you use today? I'm going to show a bunch of capabilities that are available in Exchange 2013, as well as in Office 365, SharePoint 2013, Lync 2013, and of course Skype for Business now in Office 365. Let's start with Exchange first. This is the Exchange Admin Center, so all these things you'd be able to do with Exchange 2013. And this is the in-place eDiscovery and hold area. I can create a new in-place eDiscovery and hold object. In this case, I want to investigate some of the communications that have gone on with one of the partners that we work with. Now, I know there's 2 people that are involved in working with this organization, so I can add them in. And I can apply search terms. So I could either look at all of the data there, or I can filter it down. In this case, we'll just type in the name of that partner we work with. There's also some other things I can do here. So let's say I want to only find data from the past few years. I can change this to be 2013 as the date to actually start the search for. I can also look for content sent by specific people, particular message types. We also support a rich query syntax here, so you can use ands, ors, nesting, proximity, wildcards. Now I can also decide, do I want to put this data on in-place hold? So this is what's really helping you with that preservation piece that we talked about earlier. In-place hold keeps the data in place in Exchange. Once you turn it on, any data related to that Northwind keyword is going to be kept. So if Sarah goes in, deletes a few emails related to this topic, it's still going to be there and available to me as an eDiscovery person. For Sarah, that data is gone. It's all transparent to her. She has no idea that her mailbox is on hold or that her data is on hold, but I'm still able to access it and get it back out of the system. We also are helping with that search, minimization, data reduction. So this helps me find the data I'm looking for. We've seen a lot of cases where customers have been able to use keywords to reduce data 90%. And then they can export it and get it out of the system. We also support preview. So here's one I ran a little bit earlier. I can go ahead, go in, click preview search results. and this gives you an Outlook-like view of the eDiscovery search results. So you can view the data in pane. I can't reply or forward or edit any of this content. It's just a read-only view. But this helps me ensure that the search terms I've put in are accurate, that this is what I'm looking for before I go do a heavier-handed step like exporting all of that data out. Once I'm done, I know these are the items that I'm looking for. I just click this download button, and this launches our eDiscovery tool. That will then, I can pick a location on my local machine, and it'll download that data directly there. So I have it all in an offline package. I've got those mailboxes as PST files. It contains drafts, calendar items, contact items, anything in the mailbox that matched. The Skype for Business or link content, when you have hold on, it actually gets archived into the mailbox. So as a result of searching the mailbox or exporting that mailbox, you have all of that Skype for Business content as well. So any instant message communications that Sarah had, I would now have. So this allowed me to do a quick investigation. Early case assessment, it's often called in eDiscovery. One of the organizations I was talking to recently, their process is they go and collect PSTs from users' local desktops. They collect files up, go and gather from many different locations. They load that into another eDiscovery tool. It takes a little while to wait for indexing and processing of all of that data. And on average, it was taking them 6 weeks before they could get to that point that they could actually start searching and getting information about what they had going on. With this, we're just using the built-in search platform of Exchange. So anytime I can go and run one of these search queries, it's going to be up to date. As new content comes into the mailbox, it's already indexed. So it makes it much quicker to go through this process. As you could see, I could get my information in minutes instead of weeks. So here are the few things I want you to take away and remember from this session. So we just saw the in-place hold, keeping and preserving that data in place, search queries to help you find what you're looking for, and then export. You can easily get it out of the system. There's 3 big advantages of our approach with Microsoft's tools. One is it's in place and built in. It's just part of Exchange, part of SharePoint. It's always up to date, real time, and it simplifies the process, right? For a lot of the organizations I talk to, 80 or 90% of the data they're dealing with for eDiscovery is in Exchange and SharePoint. And this makes it very easy for a legal person to be able to go in and take care of this process on their own. As you saw, it was all user experience based, what I demonstrated. So this simplifies eDiscovery, helping you save time and money and reduce your risk. This all adds up to making eDiscovery as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, performing that in-place hold. 2, using search queries. And then 3, exporting the data out so you have it in an offline package. And then you can load that data into another eDiscovery tool. So you could load it into a review tool, or you could load it into another eDiscovery search tool that could do more advanced and sophisticated analytics capabilities on that. And we do this across SharePoint, Exchange, Link, which is now Skype for Business, and file shares. We do this on-premises with the 2013 products. So if you have that or upgrading to it on-premises, you already have this, or you have these capabilities in Office 365. So we saw the Exchange piece, and that also covers Skype for Business. What if you have SharePoint or OneDrive in the mix as well? Well, let's take a look at that. So we're back in the Compliance Center, and this is the eDiscovery section. So you'll see I have a list of eDiscovery cases here. And I'm going to open up this Northwind audit. So this is a case management capability. I've got eDiscovery sets at the top, and that's how I can manage the data that I'm going to preserve. And then I have search and export right below that. So eDiscovery set lets me create groups. At the top level, I could create an eDiscovery case site, and within that I have eDiscovery sets, searches, so I could have all sorts of different things that I'm managing as a unit, and I can control who has access to those cases. So I could say only Quentin has access to this eDiscovery case, and only Belinda has access to this other one, and we can't see what each other are working on. I may need to investigate Belinda for some reason. Maybe she misused her eDiscovery powers, right? Then she wouldn't know, and right, we could keep that secret until we figured out the right set of information. So you can see here, I already have a couple of mailboxes, a OneDrive for Business, and a SharePoint team site all selected, and there's about 1,400 results. I can type in a search term, right? And let's look at that Northwind partner that we've been dealing with again. And so this will help you reduce down and filter the search results. We can run a search right away and get you back information about what exactly is going on. So the big value here is that you have one place you can go to and be able to deal with Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype for Business content all together. We can enable that in-place hold. We can also preview the results to make sure that this is the right set of stuff that we're looking for, and go ahead and save that. Once we've set up our holds, we know that we're preserving all the right set of data. We can create search queries. One key thing I want to highlight, on the SharePoint side, the in-place hold works very much in the same way as Exchange. There's a hidden location within the SharePoint site. As users edit or delete documents, we take a copy and put it in that special location. So when you run an eDiscovery search on that location, it still shows up in your search results. But for the user, their work is not affected. They can keep going on, editing, changing, collaborating, working together. We cover SharePoint lists, web pages, and of course the documents, Excel and Word files, so you're all covered. Let's actually create a new query here. And what you'll see is we're not starting over from scratch. We're leveraging that eDiscovery set that I already have. So those same people are already here. And I can just start working with that set of information. So you can see I've already got that Northwind keyword plugged in. Let's actually try and do something a little bit more sophisticated. So I'm using our near operator, right? In this case, it says near parentheses 30. And that's going to search the keyword Northwind within 30 keywords of market star. So that'll search for variations such as marketing. So that's helped us reduce down the data set even more. We can preview and open up the Exchange results and actually see what those look like. Once again, we get an Outlook view of that content that's read-only. We can see the SharePoint results. I can choose to filter those down. So let's say I've got web pages and Excel files here. I can go ahead and just search on the Excel files. We also do a query statistics breakdown. So I can see there's 370 items that match the keyword Northwind, and there's 81 items that match market star. Once I'm done building up my search query, I can just click export. You get a few options, so you could deduplicate Exchange content. That helps reduce the Exchange content, typically about 50%. You can use include versions for SharePoint, so you can get more information, get the full version history of SharePoint. and then include items that are encrypted or have an unrecognized format. So those are items that our indexing wasn't able to fully process. So you can get that in a separate folder or separate PST, and then use another tool to go in and analyze and see if any of that data is relevant. And it works just like the Exchange side. We run a client-side tool that'll just download this into a local machine. So you're getting those Exchange mailboxes as PSTs. You're getting the SharePoint native Word, Excel, PowerPoint files. You get the SharePoint archived web pages as .mht files, and then the SharePoint lists and social feeds as CSV files. So you have all of that information and context all in an offline package you can hand off. What do you guys think about that? All right, cool. Thank you. So let's review. In place hold keeps that content in Exchange and SharePoint. Today, your solution may look like you take a copy of everything and have it in this other place, paying a bunch of extra money for this additional storage, complexity of managing this other solution. In SharePoint and Exchange, we can be smart about it. A lot of stuff never gets changed or deleted. We only need to get a copy when that actually happens. It's location and query based, so you can cast a wide net and hold entire SharePoint sites, entire Exchange mailboxes, or filter and reduce that down. And there's no impact to the users. They can continue going about their work. So the search queries are real time. Yes, question?
Does the search update if new content comes in that meets the search criteria?
Yes. And we'll also have time at the end, so we can keep most of the questions for the end of the session. So say I come back and that same search I just did, say I come back a week later and run that search, new items would potentially show up if new content has been created. And that's one of the other powerful parts of this system, is that in eDiscovery cases, you often need to cover ongoing data that may get created after the case begins. So we help you reduce the data with all the rich query syntax, proximity search, and we help you make decisions with the statistics about each location, each SharePoint site, and the search query. And 3, export. So we make it easy to download that data, so you have it in an offline package. We support what's called EDRM XML, which is a file that has metadata information about all the different documents, so you can load this data into other tools, and it's all in an offline package. So a little bit of information about that other stuff you might have. I'm sure most of you probably have some data maybe on your users' local PCs, or maybe in other systems that you care about. So that PST, that mail data, you can load it back into Exchange. The loose file data, maybe from file shares or data that's been collected from users' PCs, you could load that either into file shares on premises. We support using this eDiscovery tool. You can't preserve a file share, but you can search and export from one on premises. So you could load that data into a file share and then be able to search on it there. If you have Exchange Online, we support hybrid between Exchange on premises and Exchange Online. So if you use the SharePoint eDiscovery Center in SharePoint 2013 to run a search against Exchange and hybrid, it's going to search all of your mailboxes. If you're entirely in the cloud, you can take your local data, upload the PSTs in Exchange Online, and upload those files into SharePoint Online. So everything I've shown so far is available in the 2013 suite of products, as well as in Office 365 right now. Would you guys like to see some new stuff we've been working on? Yeah? Okay. We can do that. So one of the new things we've recently released to Office 365 is being able to search all Exchange mailboxes and all SharePoint sites, as well as sensitive information search. So let's show what that looks like. So I'll go back to my SharePoint eDiscovery Center case. I can change the scope of the query, and there's now this new option to be able to search all Exchange mailboxes, all SharePoint sites. In this case, let's just search SharePoint. And I'm going to do a sensitive information search here. So what I can do is actually put sensitive type, and we have documentation about this on TechNet. And I'm going to put credit card number in there. And we actually found 5 documents in SharePoint sites that have credit card numbers. And I can actually see here, one's in one of my team sites, and then one's in one of our root web portals for our SharePoint Online environment. So this gives me information about maybe I should go set up some of those new DLP capabilities that I've heard about for SharePoint. Or go figure out, do people have a good business justification for this data? So that's available today. Now we have some new capabilities that are coming very soon in the Compliance Center. So this is our search section in the Compliance Center. We're going to go a bit more in depth here than what I showed right at the beginning, because this is my own demo tenant, nothing sensitive to show from Microsoft. So one of the cool things we have is that here we can search all of the mailboxes and all the SharePoint sites as well. I can just type in a simple search query here. So you'll see the UI is a bit basic. We just have a text box there right now. We're working on bringing new capabilities to highlight all the different properties that you can search on. But for now, you can use the same search query syntax. There's all sorts of different search properties you can search on. This hasn't been released to Office 365 just yet, but it's going to be pretty soon that we'll be releasing it. All right, so this will actually go out, and I've got about 25 mailboxes and about 20 SharePoint sites. It's going to go search across all of those and pull back information. And you can see it's actually starting to give me a little information because it's actually completed some of the searches already and updated me with some of the results. It'll be a couple more seconds before that completes. So let's actually take a look at some of the new preview capabilities we have. So I can click on Preview Search Results here. And we actually now have an in-pane preview of SharePoint as well as Exchange content. So we can actually view Word documents here. Here's one of the emails that I have. And we actually have hit highlighting. So you'll actually see the keyword I searched for, Contoso, is actually highlighted here to help you find, why is this document relevant? Why did it match my search query? We're still working on getting some of the rendering down just right, but here we can actually see a Word document. And I can actually go ahead and download that whole file if I want to. What do you guys think about that? So you can see that search completed, found about 302 items. Let's do something a little bit different. Another thing we can actually now do is search for content that is viewable by external users in SharePoint. So I did that just by putting in the viewable by external users equals true. And I actually have a few documents in this SharePoint Online environment that have been shared with external users. So this can help you assess your risk, find out, how much content out there is getting shared with people outside of my organization. You could combine this with that sensitive type operator that I showed earlier. So you could search for credit card numbers that have been shared outside the organization, or social security numbers, or bank routing numbers that have been shared outside the organization, and help you understand what's your risk, what do we have going on here. So we actually see this found 3 items. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about data you've collected from a user's desktop. Maybe you've got some PSTs hanging out around in your organization, or people are still, of course, creating files on their desktops. There's some other content you might care about as well. Maybe your marketing team is using Twitter or engaging with customers on Facebook. So we now have some abilities to bring data from these various different sources into Office 365. So I can actually preview the search results here. And so this search has some content from Twitter in it. And we can actually go in and preview that. So from the Compliance Center, you can also do that export, so you can download all of these results, right, to meet your eDiscovery purposes. And we've been working on improving that export. We can't really show it in the demo, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've been doing under the covers here that I want to talk about. So one is all right, I'm not quite sure what's happening with this, but we have shown it at other times in the conference, so we'll skip over this one. But some of the other stuff that we've been doing under the covers, one is developing a high-scale export, so we can export the data out much quickly. And so that's what we actually use here. We stage the data in a specific location and parallelize a whole bunch of the tasks around the export. So you'll find that exports, once we release the exports from the Compliance Center, will be quicker than what you get and be able to handle much larger amounts than with the Exchange Admin Center, the SharePoint eDiscovery Center today. We also have search permissions work that we've done. So you can do things such as Quentin can only search on users in the United States, or he can only search on users that are in the legal team distribution group. You can even do sophisticated things such as Quentin can only search on these specific keywords. Right? So a whole bunch of new search permissioning capabilities so you can control what scope of the organization an eDiscovery person is able to look at. Very powerful. We also have infix and suffix wildcards coming soon. I showed putting an asterisk at the end of a word. You'll now be able to put those at the beginning or in the middle of a word. We also have public folder capabilities in the works. So very soon we'll have public folders here. Probably about by the time that we release these new search capabilities to Office 365, you'll be able to search on public folders as well and place those on hold. So let's see if our search has completed yet. All right, so it's still running. We've searched about 134,000 mailboxes so far in about 20 minutes. And typically we're seeing this search, which is about 200,000 mailboxes, is taking about 30 minutes today. And we're still working on getting that to be even quicker than that. So pretty big news there. Here's one that I actually completed earlier, showing that we searched over 200,000 mailboxes. Right? It found 77,000 items. I'm a pretty busy guy. I send a lot of email, apparently. So let's get a recap of what we talked about. So here's what we have coming soon. Search unlimited mailboxes. This is a totally new architecture for the way that we distribute and manage the eDiscovery searches, so we can do it across thousands of servers in the Office 365 service. Today our limit is 10,000 mailboxes, so this is a huge jump. We're also going to be releasing this on premises in Exchange 2016. Now, there's also a limit on the number of searches you can run at the same time today with Exchange. That's going to be going away. We have a smart queuing and intelligent management of the search queries, so you can run multiple search queries at the same time, even if you're needing to search your entire environment, and we take care of it for you. I talked about the permission scoping, so being able to control in various ways what your eDiscovery users can search and preview and export. the ability to search and hold public folders. And that will be coming to Exchange 2016 as well. Search all SharePoint sites is available today. One of the things that I did not call out is that in the Compliance Center, when I was searching all those SharePoint sites, it uses the permission of the user from the Compliance Center. So if I'm an eDiscovery user in the Compliance Center, I automatically have the ability to search all of the SharePoint sites. You no longer need to go and configure permission on each individual SharePoint site collection. The in-pane preview with the hit highlighting of the SharePoint and Exchange data, infix and suffix wildcards. And then there's one more really small item here at the bottom that I think we should spend a little more time talking about in this session. And you may have heard about it at other parts of this session. Back in January, Microsoft acquired a company called Equivio that does some of the other parts of the eDiscovery process that you might be interested in. I've shown the in-place hold so you could preserve, search to help you find what you're looking for, and being able to export the data out of the system. But what about near duplicate detection or analyzing the email threads? Those can help you reduce down the data a lot. There's a lot of other eDiscovery capabilities that your teams, your legal team, may want to use to help understand and analyze this prompt. And to cover that, I'd like to invite Rocky up to the stage to tell you a little more.
Hi, everyone. So first, before we begin, how many of you before today have heard of Equivio? Okay, anyone actually used Equivio before? No. So first of all, we are really, really happy to be part of the Microsoft team. We have been involved in the eDiscovery market for a little over 10 years. And we've got a little bit of a different take on some of the things that the market does and how people approach eDiscovery. And we wanted to show you today a couple of those things and the way that we think about things, the way that Microsoft is thinking about things, and how they are going to benefit you, the corporate IT world. So, the first thing is establishing the problem. We know that we've got tons of data out there, and the data is just growing. Fact of life. Nothing that we can do to stop it. The problem is that a lot of that data, or most of that data, is unstructured. Right? It's email, Office documents, OneDrive, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, what can we do in order to organize that data and make that data make sense? How do we bring analytics into the ballgame? So if you look at the general eDiscovery workflow, Quentin talked about this at the very beginning. I'm going to give a little slightly different spin to it. We start off with legal hold, putting the data on hold, collections. How many people here are involved in, have been asked to collect data for eDiscovery? That makes sense. Almost 90% of corporations have in-place, on-premises tools to handle collections, handle legal hold. So the first step is identify that data, put it on hold, right? Big call, big picture, take entire mailboxes, entire users' data, and put it on hold. But after that, we get to this next step, which is we need to start looking and starting to understand the data. We want to explore it. We want to get in there and start picking apart the data to really see what's going on. And as part of that, we are able to use thematic analysis, machine learning that goes in without any human intervention. So Quentin showed you, okay, we're doing an investigation. We know that this Contoso company or Northwinds or whatever it is in question. And he's going to start putting in some keywords. If you've got a full-time compliance team, if you've got a full-time eDiscovery team in-house, they might start doing these kinds of searches. But the problem is that you don't necessarily know what you're looking for. So thematic analysis allows us to go in and actually tell you what is going on in your data. It gives you a list of here's all the different themes, the topics, the concepts that are going on within the data itself. And we'll take a deeper look into that in a couple minutes. The next thing is that we've got this concept of, again, you typed in the keywords, you ran the search, it comes back with results. Well, there's some problems with that, such as, I don't know if anyone saw the news a couple hours ago, but the NFL just came out with the report that looks like the Patriots may have known about what was going on with the Deflategate scandal, or at least some members of the Patriots, which I, as a Ravens fan, can't say that I'm really surprised about. But, you know, if you were to think about how they were approaching that, because if you read the report, then it says that how did they actually find out that they know about, that some people knew about it? They went through their text messages, they went through their emails, and they found communications back and forth about this. Now, one of the problems is that the Patriots came out right away, the next morning after the scandal started, and said, hey, we don't think that anyone did anything, right? Well, think about if instead of trying to search their data, because let's pretend that they have access to these kinds of tools, they're able to do searches, and they do a search for the word football, right? That's going to come back with a lot of results. And they're not going to be able to go through that really quickly. Let's say they do a search for pressure, right? Chances are it's not really going to come up with a whole lot, but you know what? It might come up with all kinds of things about how we want to pressure the quarterback, we want to apply pressure, we want to make sure that we're going after the other team, right? Keywords can be overly broad. They can be under-inclusive. So instead of using keywords against data, we believe, and it's been highly successful, and we'll talk about exactly where it's been used, but we believe that using predictive coding, using machine learning to analyze the data and determine what is relevant and what is not. Not just to say, here's what's going on within your data, but to actually learn what is important to you. That helps you get to the data a lot faster and minimize the amount of data that actually has to be reviewed. But then, eventually, you get to a point where you actually have to have the attorneys look at the data. And no matter how good you are and how many tools you use to limit that data size, there are going to be cases where it's not just going to be 30, 50, 70 emails, Twitter feeds, Facebook messages, whatever it is coming out of it. There's cases where you'll have hundreds of thousands of documents, millions of documents coming out that need to be looked at. So this is where we apply structured analytics in order to make sure that when the attorneys look at the data, they can look at it in the most efficient way possible. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is this themes. So what is themes? Right? I said it's able to tell you without any human interaction what's going on within the data. Well, we know that any document is going to talk about multiple things. You're going to have an HR document that also talks about finance, right? It talks about the budget. It talks about, people's salaries. And you're going to have things that talk about the research, but it also has something about the birthday party that is going on down the hall, and you should come to it because we're going to have the entire team is there, and we're going to also talk about what the project is for next week. So you've got all kinds of different things going on within documents. What we do is we apply machine learning to pull out the different themes, the different topics that are going on within those documents. And so first of all, on any given document, we're able to identify them. And then we're also able to show what's the relationship between those themes. What's the relationship between different documents? Now, why is this important? Let me tell you a little story. There was a large financial organization where a whistleblower came and said, I believe, I don't have any evidence, but I believe that members of the IT department in our organization are taking bribes, they're taking payoffs from consultants in order to give them business. They said, why do you think that this is so? Well, I overheard something, and this one company or two companies keep getting business. I don't understand why they're getting business. I've recommended that they not. The business keeps going to them. And I believe that there's something odd going on here. So this is actually a case that I worked on. We took the data, and we started looking through it. And we actually started, the first thing we did was we ran a whole bunch of keywords and nothing weird. I mean, plenty of weird, but nothing weird to say that there was anything going on that would be suspicious in this. We then ran some thematic analysis against it. And it was really weird in that one of the top topics that came up was this topic of groceries. Okay, this is data collected from IT, an IT department. They actually collected the data from the entire department. Now, I'm sure that everyone here at some point in time has gone grocery shopping. But how many of you write emails about your grocery shopping? Yeah, didn't think so. We started to see that there were all these different topics, themes coming up about grocery shopping. And we started going through these emails, and they were talking about, hey, don't forget the lettuce. Don't forget to go get the carrots. When you go down to the market, don't forget whatever. Okay, kind of weird, but still not totally out of the picture. The other thing, though, that we saw was that there was a really high spike in conversations about Star Wars. Now, that shouldn't be that surprising when you're collecting data from an IT department, that they might be interested in Star Wars. But here's where it got really weird. There was a huge correlation between all of the Star Wars-related communications and all of the grocery communications. Okay, let's take a look at that. So we started going in and we started looking at that data, and what we found was that, hey, they weren't saying, yeah, let's go bring the money bags down to this IT consultant and make sure that he gets paid off. They were referring to all of the payoffs and different amounts of payoffs by using keywords, code words of groceries. Different groceries related to different values of money that they would pay to different people. But internally, they were using various Star Wars characters. You had a bunch of troopers who were the IT guys on the ground who were actually executing the scheme. Then you had Jedi Knights who were the managers who were actually telling these guys what to do. And then you actually had an executive vice president who was referred to as the Sith Lord, who was the one who actually, turned out, cooked up the entire scheme. And he was the one who was in charge, and he was getting most of the money. So yeah, if we would have used keywords, just strictly gone in and started searching, we never would have found it. If we would have even thought, okay, this whole, I noticed in a couple emails some Star Wars stuff, I never would have searched to try to find that kind of data. So thematic analysis is really, really important in terms of trying to find exactly what you're looking for. Now, even if I'm using that and I'm using keywords, I need to have ways to get to understanding what's relevant and what's not. And that's where relevance comes in. Relevance is the predictive coding tool. How many people here have heard of predictive coding? Okay. Looked like almost half, which is actually good because 35% of corporations have used predictive coding on at least one case. So that's actually a pretty good percentage in the room. Now, predictive coding allows us to use the machine learning by having an attorney train the system, teach it by using a very few number of examples, what is relevant and what is not. The system then is able to go through the rest of the data and say, here's the data that is most likely to be relevant and most likely not to be relevant, and it puts it on a scale. So you're able to look and see what is likely, what has a very, very high chance of being relevant, and what's not, and then make decisions about what is actually going to be reviewed by a larger team of attorneys by using just the higher scoring or more likely to be relevant data. But then we eventually get to that point where we actually have to review it. We're going to have things like near duplicates, being able to look at the similar documents based on the actual words within the documents and say that document A and document B are 92% similar. And if I've got 300 documents that are all very similar, I might be able to look at just one of them and say, you know what? This doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing. Get rid of all the other ones and not have to review each one by one. We also are able to do email threads. Now, everyone thinks about it in terms of, well, hold on, I've got Exchange, right? I've got Outlook. I'm able to look and see my message IDs and actually put things together by threads. Why do we need any kind of analytics to tell me what is an email thread? Well, what we do is we take it a couple steps further. First of all, we're able to show the thread structure. We're able to show, like this example, how emails branch out, where the replies are, where the forwards are, how is the pattern of communication going there. But then we can take it to the next step and say, if there are any duplicate emails, because we collected from 10 different email mailboxes, and we've got these emails that are all basically the same because it was sent to all 10 of them, let's make sure that we're only looking at a single copy. But then most importantly, we're able to show which are the inclusive emails. Which are the emails that contain the rest of the thread. So in this scenario, if you look at the blue emails, I have 4 emails there, but I really only have to read the last one in the thread. And if I read that email, I know that I've read the entire content of everything that came before it. So, who wants to see it? Okay, let's do it. So the first thing is I did that right? Yep. So, we joined the Microsoft team, they say January. It was like January 28th or something like that. It was the end of January. So we've only really been part of the Microsoft team now for, 3 months. We wanted to show you a little bit of what we're doing already from an integration standpoint. There were some people who were worried that this technology was not going to actually, well, a lot of people didn't know what the technology was going to be used for. And it's really important to us that we establish now this technology is going to be a core part of how data is managed in eDiscovery in Office 365. So the first step in doing that was making sure that from an authentication standpoint, we've got authentication in place using Office 365. So when you log into your compliance center and you are going ahead and you are ready to start working on a case, you are able to use that same authentication and go ahead in, and it'll take you directly into Equivio Zoom. Now, that may sound simple. That's a really essential piece, because that's the first piece in making sure that that tight integration can be in place, making sure the security is right, making sure that the right people are able to see the data, and only those right people are able to see the data. The next thing, though, that I will show within this part of the demo is Quentin showed that we're able to export the data and then download it to your local machine, right? Well, what we're doing is we are actually taking the data, and one of the things that he didn't show is that we're going to be able to export that data out to an Azure Blob Storage, and from there, Equivio Zoom directly reads that blob storage. You get a list of whichever containers you have permissions to based on, again, your Office 365 login credentials, and we're able to directly analyze that data from that location. So that's, again, just the very beginning of this tight integration that we're going to start seeing. And hopefully very soon, we're going to be able to show a lot more of Equivio Zoom within Office 365 itself. But until then, I wanted to show you a little bit about Zoom. So, the first thing is that you've got some options in terms of being able to analyze the data. You're able to go ahead in and make sure that you're running your themes. You're able to run your near dupe, your threading, and once you've done that, you're able to come in and see those results. So let's see what that looks like. I'm able to come in here, and within any data set, it'll pull out the top topics that exist within that data set. So I can sort it by different ways. Here I'm going to sort it by the themes that contain the most documents. I can see right now that in this data set, yeah, sure, I've got some going, good, love, hey, hope. Probably not anything that I actually care about. I've got all kinds of different things, meetings, agreements. Let's actually take a look at that agreements section. And when I go into any of these sections, any of these themes, what I see is, first of all, the list of the documents, but more importantly, I see the list of the words that help to contribute to that theme. So documents I know that have to do with agreements, right? They don't necessarily contain the actual word agreement. And if I search for it just by the keyword of agreement, then I would only find a subset of these documents. But we know that there are all kinds of things that contribute to that word agreement. And this is a really important tool for attorneys to be able to get into and be able to see what are the things that actually help me to find agreements. I'm also able to see what are the overlapping themes, so that the Jedi Knights or the Star Wars documents versus the groceries. I'm able to see that here by seeing what's the overlap between these different documents. Between these themes. So if I'm going to go ahead and look at this data, I might want to take a deeper analysis and look at some different features or some different dimensions of the data. I might want to come in here and say, okay, for these agreement documents, when were those emails being sent? And this is the Enron data set, so it's a little bit older. I'm going to take a look at this 2001 data. And I might come in here and I might say, okay, that's interesting. Who or where were those emails that have to do with these agreements in 2001? Where were they coming from? Who were the senders? What were the domains on those emails? And I might come in here and I might say, you know what? Okay, that and that and that. I know that if it's coming from this Canadian address, I don't actually care about it. So I'm going to go into these. And now I'm going to say emails having to do with agreements that were in 2001 that are coming from one of those domains. What other topics are going on in here? What's that overlap? What am I able to see to understand what those documents are about? And I'm able to come in here and I'm able to say, you know what? I'm specifically looking for email drafts. So let me go in, and I might go and say, actually, let me pull up the rest of the emails that have to do with drafts. I might come in here and say, okay, now let me go in and look at those files. And when I go in to look at those files, I can go ahead and look at them by group. So instead of 18 results here, I knock it down to 11 because a bunch of these emails are parts of threads. And I only have to look at that last one in the thread. Or they're near dupes, where I only have to look at one of the documents and not all of them. When I actually go in to look at the documents, I'm able to see, first of all, the text of the document. I can also see, by digging in deeper, what are all of the themes that have to do with that document, and what are thematically similar documents to this document. So not textually similar, but thematically similar documents, in order that I can go ahead and pull that document up. And I'll leave that document up for a second. You can see if you read through that document, the word agreements does not exist anywhere within that document. The word draft does not exist anywhere within that document. If I were to use keywords, I would never have found this document. Now, the next thing that we're going to show is equivio relevance, which is the predictive coding side. And predictive coding, again, is machine learning based. And what it does is it allows me to go in and see what are the relevant documents here. And how do I do that? It's all based on a statistical model where I'm able to go in and have the attorney quickly go through small sets of documents. So in this case, I'm going to look through 40 documents. So I hope no one minds. We're just going to go through and read through 40 documents. Is that okay? Okay, good. Because I only have 2 documents that I'm actually going to look at here. I'm going to look at the first one. I'm going to say it's relevant. I'm going to look at the second one. And roses are red, violets are blue. You're a pain in the ass, but I suppose I am too. Yeah, probably not so relevant to anything. So I'm going to mark that one not relevant. And then after I've looked through all 40 documents, I'll have the ability to calculate. And what that's doing is it's taking the data, sending it to a classifier, and building out, through the algorithm using our machine learning, it's building out a model to say what is likely to be relevant and what is not. Now, I'm not going to be able to have a good model based on just 40 documents. Typically, I need to have somewhere around 800 to 1,600 documents looked at, which might sound like a lot. I know I don't want to sit there and actually look through 800 to 1,600 documents on any given day, but for the attorneys who otherwise are faced with looking at 200,000 documents or 100,000 documents, there are cases that are 20 million documents, right? Looking at 800 to 1,600 documents, not so bad. So they're going to go through, and it's going to prompt them to keep looking through these documents. And they'll keep bringing up sets of documents, 40 at a time. In this case, I'm going to look at this one. I'm going to say, yeah, that has to do with it. No, it doesn't. I'll hit calculate again. And the system tracks throughout the entire process how I'm doing. What's my progress? Here I can see that I did 29 rounds of training, so about 1,200 documents, right? 1160, sorry, to be exact. But I went through the sets of documents, and those training documents are used as part of the algorithm to build that classifier. Once the classifier is built, then I'm able to apply that classifier to all of my data. Now, when I apply that classifier to all of my data, what's that going to do for me? Well, remember the slide had all the documents ranked from those highly likely to be relevant to those that weren't so likely to be relevant. What that allows me to do, and this is especially if you show this to anyone who has to deal with the budget around a discovery review. What this allows me to do is look at all the documents on a scale from 0 to 100, right, where the ones that scored higher are more likely to be relevant, the ones that score lower are less likely to be relevant, And now I can say, what percentage of the data do I want to review? Let's say I only want to look at 10% of my data. How am I going to do that? I'm going to take the highest, the next highest, the next highest, the next highest, all the way down until I get to this gray bar. And that's going to mean that I'm going to look at 10% of my data, 67,000 documents here, and I'll find half, just under half, of my relevant documents, which is probably not what they're going to want to do, right? If you go to them and say, hey, I'm only going to find 50% of the documents that have to do with this case, that's probably not good enough. So they're probably going to want to go further to the right, and you'll see the gray bar is on the right-hand graph is moving further to the left. As I review more documents, I'm taking documents that are less likely to be relevant. It doesn't mean that they're not relevant. It just means the likelihood is lower. So eventually I'm going to get to this point where maybe I'll be like right over here, 20%, and I'm finding 85% of my relevant documents. That sounds better than 50% for sure. But maybe they're going to say, you know what? I can't get away with just 85%. That doesn't make sense to me. I need at least 95% of the relevant data, right? Because it doesn't sound right that I'm only going to look at 85%. Well, we can see very quickly that to review 85% of our data is going to cost $135,000. Let's see what it's going to take in order to find 95% of my data. I'm going to keep moving this over until I'm above 95%. In order to get over 95% recall, which is the finding 95% of the documents that are actually relevant to this case, it's going to cost me $384,000, right? All of a sudden, your litigation, the chief litigation officer, the attorney who's in charge of the case is going to look at this and say, an extra $250,000 in order to find 10% more of my relevant data, is that worth it? I'm able to put a true cost and do a cost-benefit analysis around the risk of how much data do I want reviewed based on how much data am I going to find that has to do with this case. And the courts, if you're worried about what the courts are going to say, the courts are generally accepting because the judges realize, as well as the government agencies realize, that putting human attorneys in a room and having them actually look at this data is going to, A, cost you a ton, but second of all, they're not going to get 85, 90% of the relevant data because humans make mistakes. So having the lawyers actually look at the data is not going to give you better results. In general, what we've seen in the case law is that judges have been willing to accept, in some cases, as low as 60% recall on cases. So only producing 60% of the relevant data, and in some cases, they're fine with it because it all comes down to proportionality. What is proportional to the value of the case at hand? So that is relevance. And I wanted to wrap up, we've got just a couple minutes left, with kind of where we see eDiscovery going over the next year to 2 years. In general, today, this is what eDiscovery looks like. You've got your data, right? You collect that data. Then you stick it on a truck, you put it on hard drives, you ship it off to a third-party vendor who is going to go ahead and process that data. They're going to apply different searches to that data. They're going to go ahead and put it up in a hosted review platform. Now, you might be sending it actually to your law firm. You might be sending it directly to that third-party vendor. It doesn't matter. Either way, you've got three fundamental problems with that. One is the time. It means I've got to copy that data, I've got to put it on hard drives, I've got to do something with it and ship it off until it's actually ready to be looked at. It also means that from an IT administrator standpoint, I got to spend time doing all of that. The second is risk. All of a sudden, my corporate data, all of my corporate secrets are going out the door. Because in general, litigation isn't involving the lower end people who may not have those corporate secrets. Litigation involves the CEO, the CFO, right? The CMO. They're the ones whose data needs to be looked at. And all of a sudden, I'm just taking that data that I've spent all of this time protecting, making sure that it doesn't leave my premises, and I'm just shipping it off. The third issue is cost. It costs a whole lot of money to go through this entire process. Well, what we see is that within Office 365, within the Microsoft Cloud, that's where the data should stay. It should stay there absolutely as long as it can, right? Having all of these tools to be able to do all of your eDiscovery needs, the searching, the analytics, applying that data to these various different tools that can reduce that volume around it are going to help you to eliminate all of those three risks. Important to this is having review and application partners who are going to be an important piece in helping to manage this. That third-party service that you sent that data off to, they don't go away because IT administrators are not necessarily going to want to have the time or the ability to manage that process. They're going to become an important partner within that process, and you're still going to have a review tool to be able to have that data reviewed. That review tool might exist within the cloud still so that the data doesn't have to move, but having that third-party partner involved in the process is still a very important piece. So, what's the summary of the vision? The summary of the vision is in place and secure, getting rid of the risk and getting rid of the data transfers, speed, making sure that you're able to get into that data and understand what's going on in that data as quickly as possible, and comprehensive, having all of the tools that you actually need in order to analyze that data available to you at the touch of a button. And of course, across all of the services, as Quentin showed earlier, to be able to look at that data and understand exactly what's going on within that data. So, you might ask, how do I get a hold of this? How do I start playing with this? Well, we're happy to announce that starting next month, we are opening up the preview program for Equivio Zoom. You can see the link that's there as well as in the copy of the presentation. And you can apply to become one of the first customers who are going to have access to the Equivio Zoom suite within Office 365.
So I don't know if you noticed it during Rocky's demo, but the link for Zoom was actually in Azure. And we've already been hard at work at getting all of the things that Rocky showed running in the cloud and making it very easy to use the search capabilities that I showed, be able to get that into the Zoom process. And that's what this preview is about. You don't have to go set up a whole bunch of servers and install a whole bunch of stuff on your own. We're making it very easy to just take data that you've got in Office 365 and start working with it in Zoom. And that's what this preview will be all about.
So with that, we wrap up our presentation.
And let's take some questions.
Yeah.
All the way in the back. And please use the microphones.
Oh. So when will Yammer Post be part of that eDiscovery?
Yammer Posts. So I didn't get a chance to show it, but we have actually been working with some partners to be able to ingest data in from Yammer. So that actually is something that you can already do. Having some more native built-in capabilities. We don't have a time frame for that, but it is in our vision to have better eDiscovery support of Yammer.
Okay, how about Skype for business conversations in mobile devices?
So mobile devices should be covered today.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So I think the majority of the room isn't currently storing all their data in your service.
Correct.
We have a series of your competitors' products and big SANs and all that sort of stuff. Moving from that to your service sounds like it could be difficult, and we're not going to be able to throw away everything we have on-prem, as our lawyers would not let us.
Of course.
So what's the story of, hey, you're currently using, let's say, Semantic eVault, and you've got all this data, and you have cases going on. How do we get from where we are today, say I want to move all my email up to Office 365 from on-prem Exchange, I want to start using this. The email side is really easy. This seems really hard. So is there a story about how we get from on-prem current systems to you?
So there are partners out there that can help with getting data into Office 365 from various different sources, so that's something to definitely check out. As part of the Exchange and SharePoint 2016 release, we're going to be doing some capabilities where, based on your eDiscovery results, you can actually send them to the Equivio product like we showed, so having an integration there, so making that much easier. And then, of course, we're trying to help customers get to Office 365 as fast as we can anyway, so there's all sorts of capabilities around that. At the conference this week, we also announced drive shipping, so that's another way to help you get large amounts of data into the Office 365 service. So that's another thing to take a look at, and that's actually an open program right now that you could join and be part of and start leveraging as well.
Thank you.
If there are any other questions, then please
We got
feel
one
free.
over here.
Yeah, I heard on the expo floor about a coming feature in search called Search and Destroy, which would allow one to search for potentially malicious emails or accidentally sent emails that would be removed. Is that something coming?
We have that capability today in Exchange through a PowerShell commandlet. So there's a commandlet called search mailbox, I believe, and there's a parameter you can put that's -delete content. So that is available today. There are some new capabilities we're working on. We're not quite ready to talk more in depth about those, but it is an area that we want to continue investing in.
Great. Thanks.
Looks like we got two more.
All right, all the way over here.
When you were showing putting SharePoint team sites on hold, is there a licensing requirement for that? Like I know there is for mailboxes and OneDrive sites, I think. But how about for like a SharePoint team site?
So for SharePoint sites, the hold follows kind of the same thing with Exchange. It's like Plan 2 E3 capability. With a SharePoint team site, there's not exactly a user license tied to it, but for like a OneDrive for Business site, there is.
Okay.
So, do you have another question, or?
Oh yeah, I got a lot because I've been using the eDiscovery Center. It's very helpful. I'm excited.
Do you want to catch us? Like, we'll stick around at the end, too. Let's maybe take a couple more, and then you guys can just come up and talk to us. There's someone waiting all the way in the back here.
Yeah, did I hear you earlier talk about the mechanics that are current state today from an export, and how, like, with larger mailboxes, is that set to improve? You guys are working on that? I just want to make sure I heard that right. Because we've had issues with larger mailbox exports, either needing to be restarted or timing out, or.
Yeah, so that's some of the work that we've been doing in the Compliance Center search, is developing that export to be able to handle a lot more scale, much larger mailboxes, larger exports, and be able to do that more quickly.
And that's,
so
is there any time frame around that, or?
It's going to be coming pretty soon. We're probably looking at sometime this summer.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Well, if anyone else wants to come up,
we got
let's
one more here.
Let's do that.
Let's do one more, and then.
Okay.
Yes, for a third party that could potentially export content from other sources, say like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Twitter, exporting that in, how would that be represented in SharePoint or Exchange?
So mostly what we're seeing today is that we've got partners that they're loading in data as Exchange messages, but then they're putting additional information in the message, such as there's some instances where they're using basically like a thread ID, so you can identify that it was a conversation. So there'll be multiple messages in the mailbox, and they're all related to the same thread, and then you're able to search on that kind of thing.
But what about, say, mapping that into SharePoint conversations or posts? Would that be possible?
So if you're using the native SharePoint social features, that we capture as a CSV file when you do an export, and it shows those relationships. For anything that's really kind of a communication like that, where there's that kind of relationship, we'd recommend using Exchange as the storage mechanism. If it's a native file like a Word or Excel document or that kind of thing that you're needing to bring in, that's when we would suggest using SharePoint.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.